start, Ben, with the questions. So I will be the moderator. My name is Elisa Cavalcante. I am one of the lecturers, like Janaína. Janaína, would you like to formally introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Then I'm working with employee experience to Cargill for now. And in the beginning of the year, from 2 years ago, better, we started study related to employee experience. And also I decided to write a book. But in the beginning of the year, Elisa talked to me and she asked, what do you want to do related to this scenario, pandemic, etc.? And I said to her, I'm writing a book related to employee experience. And then she decided, why you cannot transform this context in a course? Oh, it's a good idea. And then we started working with Thea for this course, but I have more than 10 years working with HR. And I have the great opportunity to work in a big companies along of my career, and also together Elisa in a big IT company, and then I'm here now. It's a big pleasure.
Wonderful, Janaína. Thank you. So, as I said, introducing myself, I'm Elisa Cavalcante. I am the founding of 3D Partners, which is a consultancy, and I'm one of the lecturers of this course. So, let's do this. So, I will have several questions that all the students made, and I will be here asking them to you. And at the end, we can just make a review if they have any other additional questions, also Janaína or Bruno, and we can complement, okay? So first question is, what is your vision regarding the future of employee experience?
Well, that's a big question straight away.
This already covers everything. Don't spoil. So answer just a little bit.
I could talk for an hour on this question alone, I've got to be honest.
Yes.
It's certainly going to be a challenging future. I think an exciting future for employee experience, because given the growth of the field and the movement over the last couple of years, it's becoming more business as usual for a lot of organizations. A lot of companies are now maturing their approach in terms of employee experience. They're getting used to it. They like it. It delivers results. So they're seeing this tangible difference it makes in practice. And people are rightly wanting more of that within their organizations and the different parts of the economy. Yeah, so a bright future indeed. But I think the more organizations delve into this subject and this topic, and they start kind of moving their services and their experiences forward, it naturally brings a question around how deep can you go with employee experience? And naturally, we want to extend what we do beyond the workplace. So then it becomes about the more holistic experience of life and work. And within the global pandemic, we've seen how forceful that change has been. That transformation has been very, very quick in terms of digitalizing the economy, creating different types of jobs and roles, experimenting with new structures and different techniques to connect with people. So I think all of that is going to continue in the future, and it's even going to accelerate further than what we have today. So I think the future is bright, but I think a lot of organizations now are questioning the very foundations. What type of organization do you want to create in the future? What is the role of organization in the human experience generally? What role is that meant to play given the issues and challenges we've experienced just this year alone in society, with the environment, with politics, geopolitical situations, different crises around the world. So all of that is converging now to accelerate and kind of sharpen the pace of change. But actually the question is, what are we transforming into? Is this going to be a technology-centered economy? Is it going to be digital-centered economy? Are we now creating, digital-first companies? Are we going to lose some of the humanity within that? So it's a delicate balancing act in terms of what employee experience becomes. But I've got to say, the results and some of the organizations we work with, what they see directly from working in the context of employee experience is absolutely sensational in terms of business performance, productivity, satisfaction from employees and customers. But beyond that, people are creating really good, strong, powerful business and human outcomes. And that's all to the good.
Lisa, you are on mute.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That was a powerful long pause there. It's like,
okay. Oh boy.
stunned into silence. Great.
Oh boy. Okay. No, so I was saying this pandemic really pushed companies to really put people, be more people-centric, right? Even the ones that were not ready for it. Like you're saying, they were like, duh, you gotta do it. That's no option, right? So I think the future, always crisis brings opportunities, right? So I agree with you that the future will be wonderful in this sense, because it was accelerated, right? But the whole transformation was accelerated. Mm-hmm. So the other question is there any steps while designing employees' journey and personas also that companies should depart from? So where they should depart from while looking for the journey and also designing the personas? What do you think is like first step to do?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and we've started off from a place where employee experience leaders and practitioners have looked over at customer experience and said, okay, what are they doing to get closer to customers and deliver more powerful results, better experiences? And some of the things that have come across very quickly have been, customer journey mapping. So we now have employee journey mapping, and we have now personalization and persona grouping and segmentation. And I think all of that is really great. In isolation, though, it can be limited in its impact if we're not focused on the right things. And in our view, so I'll give you an example. Several companies have reached out to us in the past to help them develop their holistic employee experience transformation. Now, they've already gone through the journey mapping and the persona development, and they've spent a lot of money doing that with different firms and organizations. And I said, but you've already done a lot of the basic work. You've done some journey mapping, you've got your personas, so this is all looking very good. What seems to be the problem? And they always turn around, and there's a pattern here. They always say, it hasn't really delivered the impact we set out to. It hasn't been as impactful as they wanted it to be. So yes, they've improved some journeys. Yes, they've fixed a few problems. And yes, they are generally better experiences for the workforce. But there's something been missing from that employee experience approach. So this is where we come on. So if we're talking about departing from the employee journey to look at, how can we really create something quite impactful, then the only thing I can advise really is, what's in the book. We need to anchor ourselves around the truth. Now, every organization has a truth. It's your purpose, it's your mission, it's your brand values, it's what you stand for in the world. Now, the problem with most organizations is that they never seem to connect that to their employee journeys. They do their employee journeys in isolation, looking at emotional management, looking at different ways of fixing problems and making processes more efficient. But they never come at it from the perspective of creating that strong alignment between brand and employee and brand and customer. So this is the one recommendation I would make to any colleague that's working on employee experience, is that as you go through the employee journey, we're looking for opportunities to bring people closer to the brand. So, whatever your purpose is, whatever your mission is, whatever your values are, we need to be experiencing those as you go through that employee journey and all the different touch points and milestones and all the interaction events that happen. Most consulting firms on employee experience miss this. Most vendors and technology suppliers miss this. And it's doing a tremendous disservice to the people they're trying to help. Because ultimately, if we want to talk about employee experience as a business leadership approach, it's about the brand. It's about making a positive impact in the world, and nothing should get in the way of that. not even within the employee journey. So that's the way I would position things. We're fixing things, making things more frictionless, more efficient, but we're also creating that strong connection between employees and the company. Unless you want to end up in a place where your employees are not quite happy in terms of the strength of the connection, which we're seeing in a lot of the world's best workplaces right now today. Employee activism, people complaining, all manner of different things because that connection between people and the brand has weakened over time. And these are some of the best workplaces on the planet. So if it can happen there, then it can happen anywhere. And we need to get a handle on that issue very, very quickly within the design approach of the employee experience. And if you do this, you'll be a pioneer because not many companies are getting this right currently.
Wonderful. Do you have any specific tip regarding personas? Like there's always how many personas for onboarding journey, for example? Should I have there is like any tips around that, the creation of the persona that you should give?
Again, it depends where you're starting from. If you want to get yourself covered across different levels, the typical approach is employees, leaders, senior leadership, whatever it may be, but then kind of breaking that down into very personalized persona groups. I think that's where we're seeing big advances. We're looking at persona groups that are very, very personalized in a way that is aided by technology, so we can get insights quicker about people. So I think persona grouping and the way that we do that is going to change dramatically over the next few years, simply because the technology, when we're appointing candidates, is going to be so much better. So we'll know and understand much more about candidates, and we can bring that into the employee experience. So we have technology in use now that can understand what employees' favorite foods are, or what they like to do in their hobbies and spare time. All of this information is helpful in terms of creating and crafting that great welcome experience, or that great onboarding experience, or that great career conversation. What are people's aspirations? What are people's dreams and desires beyond the workplace? I think the way I approach persona grouping is to think about the holistic human being, not just about their career, not just about their work and their role, not just about some of their favorite things, so we can do some quirky stuff in the employee experience. It's much more deeper than that. So it's understanding our employee, or our the people who choose to work with us at a whole different level. So it's what are your long-term aspirations in terms of life? What are your weaknesses and strengths in the life experience? Do you need some help with finances? Do you need some help with your well-being? Do you need some help with we're not there to help people become happy. They're there to do that for themselves. But what we can do is create a world-class range of experiences that people can access and elevate their consciousness and their outcomes. And I think that's where I would focus as much as you can within that persona grouping. So you can do the basic, you can understand different persona groups, where people are coming from, what age range, what career level, where they're going to. But I'm always asking, what's the next step of understanding? What's the next level of support we can put in place before these people need it?
Great insight.
I would like to ask something. So related to this subject.
You don't have to put your hand up, it's okay.
Is that better? Good idea.
Teacher.
I just saw a big hand come across the screen. It's great.
Are you talking about it in your book related to beyonding? And I thought, oh my God, how can I connect beyonding with diversity? And now you mentioned that you make every employee make happy in the company. How we can connection diversity and beyonding related to employee experience in your view?
Yeah, it's a great thing to look at. And the emphasis on belonging and unity and diversity has never been as strong as what it is this year, for obvious reasons. Lots of global movements that are really, bringing this to the public's consciousness and the minds of workers. So I think, that's the place I start always. Unity. I think unity offers a pathway to create strength and connection and belonging. So I think unity is very powerful as a concept and idea when we're looking at creating belonging within an organization. I think the organization, in my mind, takes on a whole new meaning because I think it's still one of the great inventions of all time. You know, we have groups of individuals with unique personalities coming together to forward and advance an idea into society. Now, that's where most organizations stay because they want to generate profit and outcomes, usually financially and usually very quickly.
Yeah.
The more progressive organizations that are coming through go one step beyond. It's about advancing an idea into society that progresses humanity and the planet. And I think if you unify around all of that, then that's a beautiful thing to do. And a lot of the social movements, a lot of the social changes, a lot of the tensions in society will start to inform and accelerate some of that thinking within organizations. So organizations now have to decide for themselves, where do they stand on these issues? And you can find out very, very quickly where organizations stand because they'll be in the press for negative reasons, or they'll be rightly celebrated for very good reasons. And I think it's coming really, really crystal clear now. You know, if your financial performance is exceptional, but the way you've delivered that financial performance goes against everything that we are as human beings and what we're trying to do to progress our situation on the planet, then that's not a good brand and it's not a good business. That realization in the future will become more predominant. There's no hope about it. It's just a natural course of human history that will become more aware, more enlightened, and more focused on creating more of that and less of this profiteering and this material madness that's going on around the world. And I think employee experience is a great step on that journey, but it's a longer term, it's a 200-year journey, I think, we're looking at.
Wonderful. Another question is something Janaína already touched, and it's always come, which is employee engagement versus employee experience.
My favorite topic. I love this one.
So there are some people that say, no, employee engagement is the big umbrella and employee experience is just a part of it. There are some people that say, no, experience is all, engagement. So what's your opinion about it?
I tend to work with the second group, not the first group.
Okay.
Or the first group come to me and then they transition themselves into the second group. I think that's the bottom line. I mean, for me, they're perfectly complementary. I mean, they are part of the same thing, which is about creating better outcomes for people and organizations. I think where there's been some confusion is the way that employee engagement has been applied as very management-centric activity. I think it's a lot of busy work. It's a lot of busy work that doesn't really add too much value within the context of a brand and an organization. And it's been applied that way through management lines and the way we've structured companies. Oh, we have an employee engagement team or an employee engagement officer or manager. And I think that's extended this myth that, you know, we are machines within an organization. I don't think it's right. So engagement, you know, employees do not care about engagement. You know, when do employees ever go home and talk about, oh, I was really engaged at work today?
Only HR talk about engagement.
Imagine you're sat at a dinner table, you're having dinner with your loved ones. Were you engaged today at work, darling? Yes, I was perfectly engaged until my manager met me and we had a very difficult conversation. Then my engagement slagged by 20%. No one in the history of the world, especially if employees, talks like that. So if employees don't talk like that, why are we talking like that? It makes no sense. So in my view, it's better to focus on the experiences because experiences are going nowhere. You know, employee engagement is a management fad at best. Yeah. It's been the wrong focus and wrong lens to look at, in my opinion. And again, the research seems to kind of play that out with engagement levels consistently globally at a very low level. You know, people are not engaged at work. And it's because we're just looking at work. You know, HR functions have taken this on board, but they only look at the work. They look at the employee with an employee payroll number. And that's the limit of their reach and responsibility. So that's the way we need to look at things. We need to look at engagement as an outcome of experience, but that's it. It's not the be all and end all. It's just an outcome of a positive employee experience, but it's only one outcome. Only one outcome. There are many other outcomes of a positive employee experience. Engagement's one, and it's still an important one for HR functions in particular, but it's just one of many. There are many other examples. I talk in the book about the return on experience, because we need to look at the results in a very holistic way. So as an employee experience leader or someone with board level responsibility for employee experience, I'm looking to claim some of the customer experience outcomes as well. You know, I'm not just interested in turnover, retention, productivity. I'm not just interested in engagement. I'm actually claiming some of those customer experience
Looking
outcomes.
outside.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. On your book, you talk about connecting experiences. How to connect the experience in favor of the purpose and organization's results. Well, you already touched a bit on that, but if you could explore more this how, it would be interesting.
Yeah. So if purpose is your why and the reason that your organization exists, then the mission and the values are the how. So that's what you focus on. So you focus on that within your business strategy, you focus on that within whatever people strategy you come up with. But essentially all we're doing is really amplifying our truth within the context of our organization. So the truth, as you present it to your marketplace and to your customers will very, very quickly see if it's your truth. You know, if your brand is promising certain things and certain values, and then the customers don't experience them, you'll get feedback very, very quickly. So they'll stop buying your products or your services, or they'll just start really complaining on social media about your brand and what it delivers in the marketplace. So for me, that truth needs to come right inside the organization, and it needs to come, you know, inside very, very quickly. I think too often you see support services, HR in particular, that see the business as one thing and what they do is something different.
Yeah.
Now, the great thing about employee experience is you bring these two things together naturally in the context of the organization. So I'm not focused on busy work. I'm not focused on low value activity as an internal practitioner. I'm focused on high value activity and outcomes that really help us move forward our business strategy. So have more impact in the world. And for us to do that, we have to bring the outside in. And that's what you do. So you work back from your...
How you bring this outside in? Give us an example.
The best, or one of the best examples was from a engineering firm in Australia, where they really get this point. So they're more mature on their employee experience journey. Now, what they did, they looked at all of the learning development programs internally. So they had 120 programs doing everything. You know, you could learn everything. You can learn knitting, you can learn flower arranging, you can learn technical skills, you can do all sorts of stuff. But what was interesting is that they thought, is that really delivering what we need to deliver if we're going to serve our customers? So they started thinking much more about, okay, who are our clients, who are our customers, and what would they want to see from our organization? And that's where they worked back from. So it wasn't disconnected. It was our customers and clients, they expect to see this from our people. Okay, let's develop this.
So let's build that.
Yeah. So immediately, all of these programs were scrapped, and they just focused on 8 development programs, which essentially created capabilities, confidence, and competence around the massive areas and attributes that the clients wish to see and have been delivering high performance within their organizations. Wonderful. So that's what they said they did, but that simply transformed the learning and development strategy from this kind of internal, everything goes kind of fragmented thing into our L&D approach. Our L&D experience is completely aligned to what we're doing in the business.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
And the results are phenomenal. I mean, they're now one of the highest rated employees in Australia. They're leading their marketplace. And, you know, it just goes on and on and on. But we're always looking for that innovation and ingenuity around how can we, you know, lessen the gap between our people and our customers. I think that's the ultimate name of the game, creating those strong, trust-based relationships that are very powerful in actually increasing profit.
Yeah.
So you have to have
as a natural result.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Wonderful.
Similar, one of the cases in the book was Starbucks, and they have a lot of meetings to emphasize all of this stuff that I'm talking about here, and they never ever mention profit. They very rarely touch on financial performance. It's much more about extending the impact of their brand within and outside and beyond the organization, and that works wonderfully well for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
how to calculate the return on investment related to employee experience?
Yeah, again, it depends on the context of each individual business, but I suppose money talks and the bottom line speaks volumes to senior leadership. So I think that's something to pay attention to. They're going after an experience where you can see some outcomes in terms of bottom line business performance is always a good place to start. So an example of that could be, a call center operation, the quality of the calls, the quality of the outcomes, the solutions, repeat business, customers, client retention. You can look at all of that.
All the KPI, business KPIs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They all come into play. And for me, it's about just simply identifying and prioritizing the ones that the board pays most attention to. Okay. Now, too often, certainly from the inside of say, a HR function, they focus on naturally the things that are aligned to their sphere of influence or their portfolio of services. So turnover, retention, engagement, those basic things. Only to find that maybe stakeholders at the top of the business don't really care about that stuff. It's the numbers, it's other things that they care about. So that's what I would look at doing. Can we do some really good research around the outcomes? So taking a very strong before picture of one experience or the employee experience as it was, and then an after picture in terms of what it delivered and what it contributed to. And it's for the senior leader at the top of the organization to argue the extent of those outcomes and the impact of this work, because it still is, it's not taken for granted that this is all about employee experience. There's other factors involved. So again, you have to defend your space and say, look, this is, we've got the data to say it's having a massive impact here, and this is what we did. And then we need to kind of tell that story, market that story within the organization as well. It's no good, delivering a great experience and then having, nothing linked to it. It's like, why? We're just doing it to make people happy. Oh, great. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. It doesn't work like that really in business. Yeah. We need to demonstrate tangible outcomes. Again, one of the best I've seen in this regard was a case study in a book, Maxis. They went on a 2-year transformation journey, and they had a rich body of outcomes that they can say, were directly attributed to the employee experience work. So they went from number 3 in the market to number 1 in the market in 2 years. Wow. I know that's a big achievement because I spoke to the competitors. The competitors said this was impossible, but they did it through this really good holistic transformation of the customer and the employee experience. They also delivered from the worst engagement scores, and this is where the engagement side comes in. They delivered from the worst engagement scores. They went to the top 25 in the world as a benchmark, and all manner of things around this. The brand reputation and preference in the market increased from below their competitors to top of their competitors. Wow. So brand, business, and human outcomes all aligned and delivering after just over 2 years, which paints a very solid picture for the return on investment for employee experience.
Wonderful. What you're saying is super aligned with what we heard from our last guest speaker. We had a class talking about how to sell a project internally and how you measure results. And to sell it, you have to have results that are really connected to business results. Like you cannot only take a look, as you said, to only the HR KPIs, but the whole organization, really sales and all that. So that's awesome. Colorful. This is an interesting question that was done by Flavia. It's related to facilities. So colorful offices, new offices layouts are trendy. What should we pay attention when designing the workplace following company's culture and values? So related to the subject, internal environment, related to really the layout of the offices. What is your suggestion? Mainly now that we are having a whole bunch of changes related to that, of course, because of the pandemic. But would you have some tips related to that specific subject?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is don't disconnect it from the other employee experience work. So make sure we're moving forward in a very holistic way, so that department heads from all of these different services are really speaking to make sure that we're creating the right type of experience and immersing people in the brand truth. I think this is a big thing. It's not just about creating funky, colorful, collaborative spaces, although very nice to do. It can be even more impactful and a richer experience if we are immersed in what is important to the brand. I think that's where sometimes brands can slip up a little bit in terms of they create the nice spaces, but it still feels like it could be any company in the world. So it's bringing out that uniqueness in terms of the brand. And it's a natural reminder to people every single day of what matters most to the business and the type of values that colleagues should be using and demonstrating every day within their interactions and their personal relationships. I remember an example where I went into one organization. They just bought this really expensive headquarters with all the best-in-class furniture and technology and everything. But you walked in and it felt absolutely flat. It's soulless. It was very difficult to describe it, because on paper it should be uplifting and inspiring and should make you feel really good. But there was something in the atmosphere which just wasn't quite right. And it was because they missed a lot of the big foundational work that they need to do with employee experience. So I think that's what I would bear in mind when we're looking at kind of spaces and places. And I think with COVID-19 and the pandemic, for me, even before writing the book, the workplace was never, ever a building anyway. It's the spaces and places that enable our best work. So directors of facilities and real estate now will need to think about actually their role now is much further beyond the workplace as they used to think, in terms of it's about enabling people to homework in really good ways and they have the right equipment and technology and tools. But also being able to work from anywhere in this world is a key advantage. But ultimately it comes down to, how deeply can we personalize the experience? How much choice can we give where people can work from? And it
the
doesn't
more
necessarily...
we personalize, the more, the better will be the outcome, right? It's not just let's be fashion. Everybody's doing colorful. Let's do colorful.
It doesn't make too much of a difference. It's nice for a good few weeks, but as we're humans, we adapt, and that becomes a norm. It's an expectation. So then we move on, and it's like, okay, that's not everything. And then we go back to, okay, what's really important? And what's really important is connection. It's the ability to make an impact. It's the ability to create really strong relations with people. That's the bottom line with an employee experience. And everything else is there to serve that outcome, whether it's workplace or different spaces, different ways of working. It's all subordinated to humans and experience, which I think is the right thing to do.
Wonderful. Yeah. So this is an interesting question too. Is there a trend to simply abandon the yearly engagement survey and substitute it for like monthly, weekly, smaller surveys that we can, have this pulse of the organization? Or one thing is important, but it's also important to have the ongoing pulse of the organization. What would you say about that topic?
This is an area that's definitely ripe for innovation, that's for sure. if we see, how many dreadful appraisals have you sat in during your career? I mean, some of them are just awful. And You know, no amount of
Yes.
training and workshops is going to change that experience. In employee experience terms, we do need to look at this. And I think a lot of organizations are moving towards focusing on the outcomes as opposed to the inputs. So it's much more about, you know, setting really good objectives from the outset and then delivering results and outcomes alongside those and reviewing them on an ongoing real-time basis. You know, getting coaching, support and mentoring along the way, I think is a it's much more human approach. You wouldn't wait for a year to tell people that they're not doing a good job. It just doesn't make any sense. And that conversation, I've got to admit, it's largely dependent on the skill of the leader. I think if you have a fantastic leader, a very poor performance management system can become very inspiring and motivational. Maybe not the paperwork, but the actual conversation can be something that takes you to the next step in your career, because it's essentially more like a mentoring session. It's more like a coaching guidance session where you can improve and where you can also get recognition. I've had some wonderful experiences in that regard in my career, and that's what I tried to pass on as a manager as well, creating more about the people as opposed to the process and the system. So given that, and given the changes and the kind of pushback towards rating and ranking people and all that kind of stuff, I think it's naturally moving to something that's more everyday, you know, real-time conversations, driven by data. Yes, we're looking at outcomes, we're looking at results and performance, but it's purely in service to people, you know, simply to become the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. And we can inform that through data, we can help it through coaching, and we can certainly support people with guidance. And I think that's the basis of a good, strong performance experience.
Wonderful. Yeah, if we wait too long, we are losing time and actions that we could provide and do to make the experience better, right? So.
Yeah, and again, think about leadership. I mean, imagine just having a leader that is so in favor of you. You know, they want you to be successful. They want you to move on and move up. They want you to become everything you're capable of becoming. That becomes not only different workplace experience and performance experience, but that's an enlightened and enriched human experience too. Unfortunately, we don't have that, you know, in a widespread way across the global economy. You know, leadership just simply isn't defined in that way, and it's certainly not delivered in that way as an experience. But if it was, you know, what are the possibilities? It just becomes, you know, unbelievably powerful, I think. So that's what we need to develop and integrate, I think, and systemize in some way within our organizations. And again, you can do that through your values, because if your values are more human-friendly and human-centered, you can start to draw on them as you move and develop your performance experience as well.
Okay. How impactful is technology for EX? Can you give us some examples of how tech enables EX initiatives?
Yeah, I think there's a lot out there now around technology. I mean, there's so much coming in to organizations and the employee experience. It's incredible, really, the opportunities we have, whether it's, you know, creating a coaching culture, so, you know, helping people access coaching through different technology platforms, the learning experience, different platforms that help with people's growth. I think onboarding is one that has been really disrupted in recent times, you know, creating more seamless, integrated and human-centered onboarding experiences. And that's a great example. Lots of different providers in the space working, but what they're all very good at is helping the manager become more human-centered, but also helping people have a great experience and a very well-organized experience as well, which is, you know, enabled through an app or some kind of technology. Technology for the employee experience generally, I've spoken about this before in terms of AI and you know, learning about people's preferences and learning about people, not in any way to monitor them, but or surveil them, which is another issue. And that's maybe the darker side of technology within workplaces. But technology in service to people to, you know, enable them is a very, very good thing. I think we just need to look at this and be careful about the combination of online and offline experiences and the amount of screen time people are having, the negative consequences of too much technology. But there are many examples of technology used very wisely by companies, and in particular by practitioners who know how to use it and get the best out of it, rather than saying, okay, we want to do something on employee experience, let's get a technology vendor in, and then away they go. It's very much a case of creating an employee experience ecosystem where we can find different partners to add value to the employee experience. It's not about one vendor or technology taking over and the organization becoming the servant rather than the served.
We have to be careful. Yes.
There's too many stories of projects which go completely wrong in technological terms. And it's simply because the practitioners haven't been strong enough to think holistically about how everything connects and how they can use it in the best possible way. And the big thing here is co-creation. You know, rather than going out and buying something very, very quickly, it's, are you buying the right thing in the first place that your employees actually want to use? I think it's a great question to start with.
In your book, I think that my favorite sentence is, employee experience is not isolated work. That's why it's so important that you co-create with all employees when you launch new technology solution and everything related to employee experience. I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, I did some research with the Economist. I helped them with one of their research programs and summarized their reports last year. I'll mention this in the new book that's coming out soon. But what I did with that is they looked at the key challenges that technology were bringing to the employee experience. And again, it was the thing that I warned against in the first book. I said, look, we need to look at employee experience holistically. We need to look at it in a very strategic business sense. But the way it's being applied now, it's creating a lack of alignment. It's creating a lack of transparency with the data. It's creating a lack of accountability. And it's creating lots of problems around how leaders are connecting and balancing that employee experience work too. So that was a major piece of research which looked at thousands of different C-suite leaders. And this is what they were saying as they looked and reviewed their employee experience work. They were saying, yeah, we're seeing the benefits of the technology. Yes, we're investing in these places. But actually, in applying this, it's actually creating some big challenges in the way that the organization is structured. So if you consider employee experience as a holistic entity, as a holistic endeavor, you can start to solve some of those challenges before they even start to appear. That's what it's a good point.
Okay, so we have here one more question saying, consider this new normal, this pandemic, crazy year. What do you think are the major gaps or problems that some companies are facing related to employee experience? So the pandemic moment and the experience.
The biggest one, and it's by a fair distance, is co-creation. So if you look at everything that we do with an employee experience is based fundamentally on co-creating with our workforce and creating outcomes in partnership. So we've seen it as a major advantage of some of the world's leading brands. They have continued to massively co-create and deliver experiences that employees want, need, and welcome. You know, they make them better as human beings and as people. So we've seen that increase during the pandemic, and it's gone even further. So these more mature employee experience organizations, they've gone further and they've gone faster than anyone else in those sectors. Now, that goes to the disadvantage because a major weakness of companies through the pandemic has been a lack of co-creation. They've been in reaction mode and they've been creating solutions that are more management or organization centric and serve maybe their shareholders, serve maybe senior leaders, but they don't serve the workforce and the people associated with that brand. And that's where they've come unstuck. When you look at, it could be HR experiences, it could be the leadership experiences, it could be the brand reputation. We've seen negative consequences across all of that because they simply haven't co-created in a meaningful way with the workforce, and then they get some negative outcomes. Hopefully they course correct once they've experienced the negative outcomes. So they did something, they launched something, they said, okay, all our workforce is now working from home. This is a good example. So they work from home, they've taken that decision, but employees don't want that. what employees are overwhelmingly saying to us across any study we care to look at is that they want more balance. They want to work, they want some time at home, but they want some time in the workplace too.
Yes.
So actually, we see a lot of Silicon Valley companies that have gone out and said, we're not working at our offices until 2021. Now, actually, I was surprised at the lack of co-creation in those decisions. That was very management centered. And a lot of the workforce has become quite activated around, we don't want that. We want more choice like everyone else is having. There's a lot of companies that are now saying, you can choose the way you work in this company. One of my clients is Ogilvy, and they started the 3-2 model. So you work at home for 3 days, but then you have 2 days in the office. And largely that's been very, very successful as a model because it represents a hybrid model where they can work and collaborate in the ways that best suit them as people. So I think, some organizations have run into trouble with this, a lack of co-creation and a lack of empathy for the workforces. But they came from the intention of, this is leading our sector. This is leading, our progressive position of things, but actually it's gone the other way. They've been derided and the workforces have kind of come back negatively to some of those changes. So even the best are getting that wrong. They're not co-creating as much as they should be. And they're getting differing outcomes.
Okay. And any other tip related to how to create this sense of belonging, even if the people are so apart? So you touched the point of co-creation, but what are other tips we can give to those people that are here listening of how to build this sense of belonging, even if they are at their houses or their homes and connecting through Zoom, and people usually don't even put the cameras because of whatever they are doing. So
again, it comes down to the context. You'd have a look at what works for that particular business, what's in the interests of that particular organization. I would never encourage people to copy any other brand other than what their people are saying and feeling. I think that's where we need to go to. So it's becomes
an individual reflection, right, of each organization to brainstorm over that.
Yeah, and it becomes a very practical approach in that manner because we're not just, I've heard about this practice over here, let's try that, let's try this. A lot of organizations, when the pandemic first started, they started these Friday party Zoom calls where everyone would come together and they'd have drinks and well fun and everyone's laughing and then maybe they do a quiz.
Maybe a lot of
band. Now, if we dissect this, because we're all interested in this stuff. So if you dissect that, you can see the intention is good. It's there to create a sense of belonging and connection. But after a few weeks, what employees turned around and said was that it feels very forced. And it feels like I have to come to this space now. So therefore it's lost all its impact. So there is something about that in terms of the human experience. How do we connect with and draw on the strength of what the human experience is? We're spontaneous people. We like different experiences, a different range of things going on in our life. So for me, it becomes, much more personalized. You may have different interest groups within your company. How can you create spaces for those interest groups to come together? You may have different clubs and societies or different things that are going on. So it's about much more personalized choice within all of that. Looking beyond the organization into the community. There's a big volunteering movement, which is beautiful, and I fully support, and my organization supports it. So people have different interests.
It really matter.
Yeah, exactly. So if we put the human at the center of things, it just becomes so easy to develop a right kind of experience, and it becomes very practical. So we're not just copying what other people are doing. It's just very unique to us, and that's the way they like it. I think organizational culture-wise, it chimes into rituals and routines. Some of the rituals and routines become very powerful because employees want them and buy into them. Some fail and fade away because it came from a headquarters somewhere. So I still think co-creation is a big part of the solution to some of these things. And guess what they did with that example? Well, after a few weeks of party time on Fridays, they cancelled it. The intention was good and the impact was good
was
early on,
yeah.
but you have to adapt and you have to change.
Yeah.
If it's not working, don't just continue flogging it. Move on to
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that people welcome and respect.
Yes, that's it. Great. Okay, so it's 11, already 11 o'clock. We have here a last question from our students. And maybe Janaína would like to have one more question, but this one is a very interesting question that was a point that during our course, it was touched several times because it's really something that worries all of us while we are implementing a successful EX project. So the question is, in your book, page 133.
It was very specific.
Specific. Page 133, she said.
Paragraph number 3.
Flavia. There is an example of a manager saying to an employee, this is just corporate stuff and doesn't really apply to us. Unfortunately, I heard this speech, she was saying, I heard this speech myself many times. Can we consider that developing leadership for an EX mindset is a point that companies leave aside when designing employees' journey? What can be done to change the game, to really onboard leadership so we will not hear this kind of stuff that will, of course, ruin the program? So what is your suggestion related to that subject to really mobilize the leadership and engage them into that direction, more people-centric and really valuing the experience?
Yeah, so this is the subject. So I run the holistic employee experience practitioner program. So we certify practitioners. And we do deep level coaching on that program. And this is one area that consistently comes up as well. How do you get leaders aligned to employee experience work? And I asked someone as part of their assignments to reflect on what they would do in this situation. Mm-hmm. And this is an employee experience leader. They're new into their job. They're looking at employee experience strategy from an operational and strategic perspective, but they're also looking at leadership. And I asked him to go out into the future and write a statement in terms of what it would look like to create this great model of leadership that perfectly aligns with employee experience. And it was a beautiful piece of work.
Oh, tell me.
So much so, I'm trying to get it into the next book because I like it so much because it just hits on everything that we need to do. If we had a free reign in terms of employee experience and our organizations, this is what you would do. And essentially, it's what I advocated in the last book. It's what I'm going to advocate again in the second book, which is we have to take a very strong stance on what type of leadership we require in the organization and the type of leadership that's going to best serve our organization. So our colleagues spoke very, very candidly around if they don't want to be a leader, we're not going to force them to be a leader. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a great principle. Usually, if you're a leader, you've become a leader to get promoted and to get better financial outcomes. Now, if you separate that and say, you don't have to be a leader, you can continue on your journey as an expert because we recognize your craft. We recognize the value you bring to our growth journey. So continue on your path. You don't have to take responsibility for people because that's not your thing. And you're not good at it. And if you did, you would destroy our company.
Exactly.
Now, how often does that
Our company
occur?
keeps promoting people that has nothing to do as a leader. They really don't fit. They don't want.
And it makes no sense. It's like installing one of your enemies or competitors into your middle management function and saying, look, sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do as much damage as you can. Destroy the company. Great.
It's
that's
just like
essentially
doing
what you're
this.
saying. Yeah. It's
I agree.
And that's exactly what they do. And the language reflects that. Oh, this is a corporate thing. This is a HR thing. This is a, CEOs, not very good. That's an alignment issue.
Yes.
If they're not aligned to the business, the truth of the business, then they're letting down all the people in that business and they should be removed from management.
Yes. Wonderful.
They're not aware of what they're doing.
That's what Alan Hutchins, one of our guest speakers, also mentioned, right? You have to be prepared for that function. It's something very serious. It reaches the bottom line result of the organization if your leaders are not really prepared to lead people, to take care of people, right?
It makes no sense. It's still one of the greatest enigmas, and it's like it's a $400 billion industry where we spend lots of money on leadership development, and the return is next to nothing. It's ridiculous. I think it's still one of the biggest corporate scandals of all time. If you invest $300 billion into leadership development, and this is still the economy we have, we're fundamentally doing something wrong. And you can study leadership for eternity. The range and depth and breadth of all these different leadership courses, so vast, but so overrated. The one big thing you can do in terms of leadership development is get people talking and living the truth of the business in conversations, in one-to-ones, throughout the employee journey, getting closer to humans, serving them as best as they possibly can, mentoring, coaching, guiding, cultivating. That's where we need to focus. It doesn't have to be this leadership technique or that leadership technique. It's what works for the business. It's a human-centered leadership campaign that essentially you're creating. And it has to be systematic in terms of, you can't promote poor leaders into the business. You can't recruit.
The importance of assessment, right, Ben? The importance of having the right assessment to figure out the profile of the people that you are promoting, right?
Yeah, one of the world's, well, it is the world's best workplace. They embrace the holistic employee experience, and the meaning of values in that company is different to any other company I've seen. So if you go for a leadership role in that company, you could expect a minimum of something like 15 interviews. 15 interviews.
15 interviews.
Yeah, and they're not even talking about technical skills. They're only talking about values.
Yeah.
Now, what that leads to is better decisions and longer term wins. So their turnover is next to nothing. They really maintain a loyal workforce. So those are some of the things we need to solve if we're going to work on that leadership issue.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Janaína. It's already 11:10, but would you have to make a final question?
I would like to offer my opportunity to Bruno, because Bruno, our guest speaker, I don't know if Bruno have some comments or a special question to Ben. I would like to offer my opportunity to him.
Good.
Thank you very much. Actually, Ben, lots of insights. I really appreciate to be part of this session with you. I took a lot of notes, and I was in our last discussion now regarding leadership. I was just reflecting here that for a lot of time, being a leader became one symbol that you grow in your career, a symbol that you have now a status to, be the boss. But I've been seeing some movement in organizations to foster, reinforce being a leader as a purpose. If you have the purpose of being a leader, if you have a purpose to help develop people, now you are about to be a leader. So it impacts, in my view, the experience that the leaders will promote to their people. So based on this, could you share with us what, in your view, the leadership role for employee experience? So we know there is corporation, leadership, individual. What is the role that leaders play for employee experience in organizations?
Yeah, I've just looked at this actually for the second book, and working with our practitioners and people we work with, we came up with an idea that was...
You start selling your book to us.
Yes, we will be the first to buy.
I can't talk too much at this stage, but
yes.
yeah, there's a whole raft of things in there that are going to be very, very challenging for people to read.
Wonderful.
They've let me loose this time.
That.
So yeah, we're gonna very interesting, I would say. But within that, I think what I can share is that we have to go deep down into human centricity now. Servant leadership I recommended in the last book, a continuation of that, because we are really in service to our employees. If, like I said, if you're a HR function and your mission is to just simply create the best experience for your workforce, what's to disagree with? And what's to disagree with that? If you're a HR function that stands with your people and says, I'm only here to create the best experience for you, employees can't really say anything against that. It's just a beautiful way and platform to launch that work. And it's very, very similar for leaders. If you knew deep down inside your heart that your leader was solely focused on your best interest in terms of your interests, helping you achieve your potential, fulfill your performance goals, meet your expectations, not the expectation of others, because actually they don't really matter too much. It's what we feel within. If you have a leader that's focused on helping you grow from within, grow your strengths, build your character, and maybe even on your spiritual journey, if you believe in that type of thing, becoming more aware of who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then going out there and making a contribution in the world, leaving a legacy and making your mark on humanity and the planet. Again, I can see that as a very powerful form of leadership across any organization. And it would be quite something to see that fully implemented. Some organizations are moving forward with different initiatives and campaigns in this regard. But if that becomes the norm for leadership, then we wouldn't have this $300, $400 billion challenge that we have today. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then just additional comment to check if you agree. A good leader can compensate not that good workplace or some conflict among colleagues. But if you have a good leader who is really interested in your development and make your life easier in your experience, even a better experience day by day, it can compensate the other challenges that you've been facing during your journey in organizations, right?
Yeah, and that's not an outcome that you want. From an organizational perspective, you don't want to see that outcome. But in many organizations, it's absolutely the outcome, because maybe the organization is very poor holistically. It's not very strong. It's a stressed organization. So everything reflects that. But then you have this bubble. It's like these social bubbles that we have with COVID-19. You have a bubble. And in that bubble, you are safe, you are protected, you feel good, you feel cared about, you feel supported. And that, can be more powerful than anything. And that is what creates the attachment and loyalty to the organization, not the organization itself.
Yeah,
it's a poor situation to be in, but too often many colleagues are in that situation. But yeah, I agree completely. The leader makes a fundamental difference. And I've seen it. I've worked and lived in 8 countries, and I've seen this time and time again. The quality of the leader will actually determine a lot of the outcomes that people achieve. Because they may not, naturally, if you have high performers, they have a lot of internal motivation, and they are driving their own bus. But leaders who are not so good can sometimes get in the way of that. It's not what they do, it's sometimes what they don't do. It's sometimes they hinder progress as opposed to help it. So yeah, absolutely spot on. Leadership is key. And that's why I position it as a very strong part of the employee experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
Wonderful. So that's it. Thank you very, very much, Ben, for your participation. It was really a pleasure. I'm sure all the students, the participants here were like Bruno, taking a lot of notes. And we are super pleased that you really opened this time on your super busy agenda on a Saturday to really share your views and experience. We are now connected, and we are all your fans. with the book and everything, everybody that received. Read it, everybody, all the people that will see this video later on is amazing. So really it was a great pleasure. In the name of FIA Business School, we thank you. And let's keep in touch and let's do more and bring the best employee experience ever on our organizations. It was really, really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure. And yeah, whatever you're doing in the future, enjoy the experience.
Yes. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Ben.
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.